Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We're excited to be here from Penn National Insurance's data center with the Penn National team. Also joining the call are our partners at IGEL, and this is Thomas Charlton from Goliath Technologies. Today, we're here to talk about the challenges that present themselves when IT teams are trying to manage hypermobile workforces. Now, remote workers and hypermobile workforces present a lot of business and personal flexibility. However, the challenge becomes giving the remote workers access seamlessly to applications and desktops. And so some of the challenges that we'll talk about today, managing remote workers and users, is that they're using variable connection quality. They have different devices, they're working from different locations, and all the while, they expect seamless end user experience as if they're in the actual building. So today, I'll turn it over to the team from Penn National Insurance, as well as IGEL. And by way of introduction, we have Dan Morrison, who's the Director of IT, Infrastructure and Operations here at Penn National. We have Mark Kiefer, who's the Senior Infrastructure Systems Administrator, and Dan O'Farrell, who's the Senior Director of Product Marketing at IGEL. And first we'll start with Dan so he can frame up a little bit of the backstory with the IGEL thin clients.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Thomas, appreciate it. Just thought I'd give everybody a quick overview of IGEL in case you are not familiar with us. Again, I'm Dan O'Farrell. I'm responsible for the product marketing function. And what we do is we provide an operating system that is fine-tuned for the delivery of virtual applications, desktops, and cloud experiences. So we work very closely with the likes of VMware and Citrix and Microsoft in kind of like the classic VDI type environments. And we also work very closely with the prominent cloud providers who provide these cloud desktops. Think of AWS and Azure, for example. And we call IGEL OS the next-gen edge operating system for cloud workspaces because it really does serve as an ideal lightweight endpoint OS once you have moved Windows to either your data center or into the cloud. And what's nice about IGEL OS is that it's super easy to install, super secure, and it enables companies to aggregate all of their endpoints, right? Windows PCs, laptops, tablets, anything that's a compatible x86 device is a candidate to load IGEL OS onto it. And it turns out that IGEL OS is super easy to configure, stand up, patch, update, etc. So we really do strive to make the life of the endpoint administrator much, much easier. And especially if you're doing like M&A activities with all kinds of new devices, it allows a single console to kind of manage and control all of those devices. And what really has driven our existence and our prominence kind of in the end user computing environment is what's happening with how people work. Right, traditionally we would all work out of an office. You'd go to work there, but then Citrix and VMware came along and with virtualization, right? And on those VMs in the data center, they can set up virtual desktops. And now the cloud providers are doing the same thing as a service to allow us to get to our apps and desktops from literally anywhere, right? You could, a lot of us work from home. A lot of us will work while we're on the road. Starbucks, etc., and you get that great consistent user experience. That desktop that you're used to now shows up exactly where you expect it, and all your apps are at your fingertips. So that's great. Now, while that is great, the idea here is to move Windows off of the endpoints because you still have the issue. If your endpoints are running Windows, you still have to worry about all the patches and the updates and the management of those Windows endpoints. And especially with Windows 10, that has become a real burden for a lot of organizations. So the logic here is if you're moving Windows into the data center or cloud, it's silly to run Windows on your endpoints. It almost defeats the purpose. So what we offer at IGEL is a lightweight operating system called IGEL OS, which replaces Windows on those devices. So you don't have to buy new hardware. All you need is a gigahertz processor and a gigabyte of RAM, and you can just simply take Windows off, load IGEL OS on, and access Windows that's running in the data center or cloud. And you can manage all of this through what we call the IGEL Universal Management Suite. So you have a single console that enables full control and management, updates, patches, massive scalability to the tens of thousands of all your endpoints from a single place. So that's what we do. We basically provide the same user experience your people are used to with a full-blown Windows system, but instead, they've got IGEL OS, which now makes life much easier for your IT endpoint administrators. Where do we see this going? Well, you know, the world really is moving to cloud-based models. Now, you might have your private cloud, but the public cloud in the form of Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, etc., will be offering Windows desktops right from their clouds as a service. So if you move to IGEL OS today, you'll already be basically future-proofed and ready for Windows virtual desktops as that service rolls out. And that's actually happening starting this year. So what do? We can modernize your workspaces while securing your network edge. We can allow organizations to stop wasting money on new hardware, right? The hardware refresh happens every 3 or 4 years. Don't do that. Keep your current hardware. It's good enough. It's more than good enough to run IGEL OS, save all that money, avoid all the disruption of new gear going out to all of your users, and make life much easier for your IT team, especially your endpoint administrators. And then again, easily set yourself up to move to the cloud if and when you're ready for that. So that's what we do. That's it. I just wanted to give you guys a quick, alert as to a campaign that we're running. So if you can see, imagine yourself maybe not wearing a helmet, but imagine yourself driving a new Porsche Taycan. That's the all-electric Porsche. You can do that by going to www.ichallengeeverything.com and use the code that we showed here. When you get to that site, just insert that code, and you can give yourself a chance to win an all-electric Porsche Taycan. So that's it for me. That's the quick intro to IGEL. At this point, we'll be happy to hand it over to Dan Morrison of Penn National. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dan O'Farrell. So that was actually, I enjoyed your piece of the presentation immensely. You highlighted a lot of the topics that we really adopted in our workspace initiative by leveraging the IGEL OS and the IGEL appliances to simplify our edge going forward. So with that, I wanted to talk a little bit about our initiative to make a seamless workspace initiative for our employee base. We have Penn National Insurance. We're actually enjoying our 100th anniversary this year in 2019. So we're a property and casualty company here based in central Pennsylvania. I kind of characterize this as kind of a smaller company with big company pains as far as the technology. We have a wide area network that we have to support, and we're having a lot of our workforce now working much more at home. So we've virtualized our infrastructure. We want to centralize and give a unique and uniform desktop presence, and we're using Citrix XenDesktop to do that. And so that whole initiative is very feature-rich from a desktop perspective, but with that comes some technical issues, technical difficulties that you have to overcome. And with that, we needed to select products to help us craft a solution that was performed well. Really, the root issue that we saw was employees, as they worked at home, would have performance or response time issues in this new environment, since it was so feature rich, and we had to do probably the most difficult application we had was our telephone system. We delivered a soft telephone to this desktop, and that was very challenging. So we have a Cisco soft phone solution and a Skype solution that we're delivering audio and video payload across our virtual desktops in the environment. And what happened there with that, that's the most demanding application we have. And with that, we had to craft or find a product to help us manage that solution. So Mark Kiefer was instrumental in finding a product and actually crafting that solution to optimize the delivery of that audio application. So maybe Mark can talk a little bit about the technical tool that Goliath provided to help us do that.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so what we found very valuable using Goliath is, first, is you can see the discovery and the dependency map, which they call the topology view. It quickly can show us on a daily basis exactly where bottlenecks may be lying within the Citrix infrastructure, which was really helpful because you could go to one place, you see right away if it's green, there's yellow or orange and red, and it will let you know right away where your problems or bottlenecks may arise. And then the part that Dan was alluding to is this is actually a Skype call between Dan and myself, and during some of our tribulations of what's causing some of the problems. And so this was the detail that Goliath is able to give us throughout the whole life cycle of the connection. If anybody's used the free tools from Citrix, not that they're bad, but they give you a point of time, which really made it difficult to troubleshoot down what's having a problem. The other thing is this aided us as we made adjustments to either Citrix policy, firewall policies, we could then go back historically the next day, the next hour, 30 days from now, all depends on how you set Goliath up, and we could compare data. And that's king. I mean, if you don't have the data, you won't be able to really, quantify what you fix.
Yeah, I think really, like Mark, what you, there's the saying that what you can't manage what you can't measure, right? So we had initially, when we had this workspace initiative roll out, really the success of that was at risk, because as we delivered this feature-rich desktop, virtualized Windows 10 environment with a soft phone, in that we can't control quality of service over the internet, we started to get feedback from employees that wasn't meeting their expectations. Those audio calls weren't as good as what they could be. And the standard tools from Citrix wouldn't give us the visibility that we needed to really find out where the root issue was. So it's hard to manage a project when a lot of this kind of conversation is based on hearsay is not the right word, but it's really an intangible kind of discussion. So for instance, the slide deck you're seeing now shows and articulates the performance of an audio call, and we can get into the specific audio channel and have a conversation with the end user as to what that visibility is. So it really promoted a better conversation with our employee base.
The next thing is how IGEL worked well within Penn National. And here's just a screenshot of actually our environment and how the IGEL has been able to really help us. So we have a mixture of their actual IGEL devices and UDC desktops. And what's nice is once we re-imaged our Windows machines to the UDC desktop and they fell into the portal, we can now configure it. We have one management portal to control our contractors, our employees, our conference rooms. We even have like an appliance mode, which kind of puts them into like a kiosk mode. Kiosk appliance mode is kind of the same thing. So it's really been centralizing that into one management portal, which has been, from a time-saving standpoint, it's been phenomenal. And it's so easy. We can take machines that we want to test and just move them from one folder to the next, and it reconfigures them on next reboot or whenever we want right then. And it allows us to quickly adopt and change configurations on the fly. Sometimes we, much like Dan is saying, we had to really dig deep into the visibility of the data, and without Goliath, it was almost impossible to be able to pull the data from all the different pieces. So, our hypervisor, director, app flow, or NMAS within NetScaler. It's like, so you pull all that stuff together, you spend so much time trying to figure out exactly what data you're looking at and correlating it to that time. And at spot of time, the problem. So this is actually my favorite view. And the reason is it's not as fancy as a topology view. And, I know, Tom, they put a lot of time in the topology view, and it's phenomenal. But this is my favorite, but I'm a technical person. As you can see, and this is true, this was actually taken 3 days ago. The top person is a satellite user. So we have 2 satellite users, actually. One person uses HughesNet, the other one, I'm not sure what they use, but they should probably move. And we can quickly diagnose if we're having problems based on the client IP address, if it's internal, external, who's really struggling, who isn't, and if we see somebody who is abnormal. So we always know that those 2 users at the top are always at the top. But let's say the third person down there with 250 milliseconds of latency, we watch her session for a little bit and we notice that her latency is not going down. We can call and reach out to her and say, hey, you're having some problems and you're home right now. We know, how can we help you? And that's actually happened, that the person's machine was actually waiting with Windows updates, had her reboot, her latency went down and her experience was better. So it's having us being proactive to our users, and that is why this is my favorite view.
Now, early in our project, prior to Goliath, I would receive a telephone call and say that employee A was unhappy with their experience with their virtual desktop at home, and that would those kind of messages would permeate through the organization, and it was difficult to manage. So a lot of that we didn't know. We didn't have the visibility. We didn't know why. So this is an excellent example of how we see visibility. On the left side of your screen, you can see the virtual desktop instances. We've kind of purposely deleted the name, or so to protect those employees. But we can see visibility for each of the employees. We know when an employee is really outside of our policy. In our policy, as folks work from home, they really need strong broadband type connections. Satellite usage is really outside of that. We don't really, that's not in our portfolio of internet that we support. But we do have sometimes employees that are pushing the envelope and working these other, whether they're coming in DSL or satellite, but we can pick that out. We have visibility, and then we can have a dialogue with them to help them get back into our policy. So prior to that, it was very difficult to manage. So this is a fantastic illustration of how we use the tool real time.
The next slide shows another great feature from Goliath is the connection speed. So what's nice about this is that you can tell what the user's connection speed is at home, not just based on network latency or WAN latency or ICA latency. You're looking at the connection speed based between the virtual delivery agent and the Citrix client, and you can tell from a user if they're really struggling. So this is probably from my favorite view. When you go into a session, this is the first screen we look at, and it really is to look at the connection speed. What's the user feeling? Is it really jumpy? Is it stagnant? Is it pretty solid? Is it really low? Are they running DSL and just really struggling? So when we talked about the phone, this is actually a screenshot from that I sent to the user. She's having some problems with phone. Her phone dropped. The communication kind of stuttered and came back. And we had a conversation with her, like, well, what happened like something happened because you weren't in the building, at the house. So here came to that their kids were playing video games, which was actually causing drops in connection speed and creating high network latency. So we've used Goliath and actually shared this data with our users with a conversation. And we've been able to create conversations that we never were able to before, which has been invaluable to us. And it's not just a point of time. And that's, Director's great tool for everything that it is, but it cannot give us the data that Goliath was able to through the entire session. And historical, we keep 30 days worth of data. So I can actually look at every session for a user 30 days back, look at their connection speed, what trouble they're having. So when a user contacts us and says, last Tuesday, it was just really bad, we can actually go back to last Tuesday and compare it to the day that they're saying it's really good. And we can see that data, and having data be able to create the conversation has been just great for us.
Thanks, gentlemen. So we have quite a few questions that have come up, and so let's get some advice from the pros. A couple of questions that have come in. Do you have a latency goal or threshold?
We haven't adjusted it from Goliath, so we've kept the Goliath measures, because Goliath measures are based on the Citrix recommendations. So we've kind of stick to those recommendations based on what Citrix and has always said.
Okay. How long have you had Citrix?
A long time. So we're a vested user in the Citrix technology. So we started out with XenApp. So we've migrated our environment from XenApp to XenDesktop. So our client base was very comfortable with XenApp, but the difficulty of that was they worked differently when they were in the office than when they worked from home. So part of our workspace initiative was trying to make a uniform experience from their office to their home. And our employees are working oftentimes 2 days a week from home, some more. So we've transitioned into a much more fluid environment. So, but again, the big plus here is that we've got this, they're a Windows 10 desktop now, XenDesktop. When they come into work, they're launching their IGEL, and they're taking control of their Windows 10 desktop, and when they go home, their environment is exactly the same, inclusive of that telephone. And the telephone is the most demanding application we have because naturally you can't cache any voice content. It's got to be real time. So, and that's what really kind of drove us to your product, Goliath.
Okay. And what is the specific product you have from IGEL?
We have both. We're using both their OS device, and I've got an appliance. I've actually got the appliance on my desk. So we have a combination. What we did is as Dan had talked earlier, we actually adopted much of all his bullet points. We've turned our desktops into IGEL appliances, and we used to refresh a desktop, 3 to 5 years. We're not doing that any longer. We're using IGEL on the edge to extend the life of those assets that we already have, and then as they break, we're replacing them with the appliance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What have you had trouble with logon times?
They are higher than I would like at times. We are using the Goliath, how they break it out. There's a logo on which we didn't have a slide of. It's never been a huge focus of us here, but when you do see something extremely high, you can then decode, is it something that's going to be reoccurring, especially if you start seeing a pattern. When we've gotten them from 100 seconds down to an average of 60. So we've used the tool to look at group policies to try to thin them out so we can try to be more targeted. But it's never been a huge drive.
We just were in a meeting yesterday with to that point about talking about primarily the way we assign printers and their printer drivers through group policy and trying to streamline that process. Of course, we're using Goliath to monitor the login times, so we have visibility of all that, so that we can take. I mean, everything we're getting is actionable, so we can see that report, and then we can proactively address it even before the employees are saying, "Oh, gee whiz, I wish my login time was better." So another great, great attribute of the tool.
And this is kind of a cryptic question. It just came in. It just said IGEL and then question mark why.
Can we get Dan back on the line? That's
from your perspective, I guess, is why IGEL thin clients, or maybe why thin clients in general.
From a technology standpoint, from a person who's had to deploy it and can help configure it, and there's more than just myself. There's a whole team of us behind Dan and me that have made this successful. Is when you look at a lot of the other products that do something similar to IGEL, they're not as mature. They're trying to do Raspberry Pi. They're trying to do their own little device to make it small. But when you take that OS and then try to put it onto another piece of Windows hardware, and then try their management's not as mature. IGEL, when you look at everything that they offer, it's much more mature from our standpoint than any of its competitors, which the maturity, the ease of being able to work with the product has, really made it worth the money that we've invested.
Yeah, and if I can interject really quickly, the other thing we hear from our customers is our technology ecosystem. So in other words, connecting peripherals, printers, card readers, scanners, staying current with the latest clients from VMware and Citrix. This is platform independent software. So that's the other reason often, as we'll hear from our customers, is the support of existing environments and a wide array of peripherals from different vendors. Yeah.
Yeah, so Dan, those are good points. I mean, really, when we used IGEL, it simplified. We just look at our whole patch management portfolio that we used to have to do on the edge, right? So now IGEL really simplified that whole process. We have a single pane of glass. That whole platform can get easily upgraded. It really it improved our security posture greatly. Because we're leveraging the patching and kind of the single image of the XenDesktop, so our patching process, our monthly patching process for Microsoft in the Citrix XenDesktop environment is very mature, and IGEL took all the pain away from our 850 Windows-based desktops. So that alone was a significant driver in kind of us adopting kind of this thin edge. And of course, as Mark had indicated, IGEL is really kind of a leader and mature in that space.
And one last question, and then we'll be done. So, Mark, are there other examples? It's a amalgam of a question here, but another conversation was a live conversation where you identified user behavior as the issue.
Yeah, actually last year, so we live in the Northeast, right? So snow. Mm-hmm. When snow happens, pretty much this building, 600 employees, mm-hmm. pretty much all work from home. So when that happens, you start getting more people saying, hey, it's slow, it's slow. So going back to that connection speed, the one where you show the connection parameters, we've had, person call in and go, I can't even click. Well, not only are they home, but their kids are home from school. Well, now, so like we actually had somebody who you could see the connection speed was, let's say, 6 meg, decent, good response time, round trip times were good. And we're like, well, did your session become worse around this time? It's 8:05. She goes, yeah. We're like, well, what changed? Oh, my kids got up. Well, now they're watching Netflix. They're streaming Hulu. They're playing games. So we've had those actually more often than not. It's like, it's not just one, where it created that conversation. Like, well, that's kind of affecting your performance on your machine. So you have some options, right? So we can kind of go through, like, we hate to have their kids, but to let them know that, like, what's happening at their endpoint location is affecting their ability to work. Some of them have gone out and gotten, faster internet. Some, it was as much as calling the ISP and getting a new router because they're having router issues. Rebooting a router because it's never been rebooted, has helped. So have kind of, hate to say we've troubleshooting the end users' homes, but we've aided.
Mm-hmm. And it's not always that direction. We've actually used the tool to look back into the data center too. We had a situation where we were working a call where we had some performance issues for a virtual desktop at home, but the connection to the home looks good. And it turns out that the issue was more in through our transition zone, our firewalls, the way the introspection we were doing on our security payload. So there's a lot of different pieces to the puzzle. So Goliath really is giving that visibility not only to the desktop, but back into the data center too. So it's very difficult to correlate all these different avenues of where an issue can be, and so we find really this is probably the go-to product mm-hmm. That we use now in our kind of our virtual workspace initiative. We probably did 3 or 4 months early when we started our early rollout. We're probably up to around 580 virtual desktops out of 850 people. So we're continuing that. We're not through with the project yet, but we're 3/4 of the way there. the first few months of that, without Goliath having the visibility, we were working these performance issues and didn't really know how to respond, right? So, and we know we needed to get an early jump on this. So, I mean, frankly, the Goliath product was not in our software budget. It wasn't forecasted. This was a variance for us, and typically anyone that's managing the budget knows how a variance can happen. But this one was an easy sell because it provided us a solution. It provides, Mark said, it's the conversations we can have with the IT management and the IT employee. As soon as the employee knows that we have this type of visibility, the conversation starts to change. Are they within our policies, or what type of connections do they have, or is, in some cases, we're looking back inside the data center. Is the infrastructure staff, are they doing everything they can to make the product perform for us? So, yeah.
That's great insight. So Dan Morrison from Penn and Mark Kiefer from Penn, thank you very much. Dan O'Farrell from IGEL, thank you for joining as well. And those of you that joined will receive, I guess everyone that registered will receive a recording of this conversation. So once again, thank you very much for giving us your insights.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Sure, our pleasure.